Who is Seth Magnus? A traitor, a warlord, a criminal, the most wanted man in the Iron Kingdoms. A man that could never be restrained, a man unstoppable. Once, though, he was a man of pride and stature, a commander of Signar's impressive army. Magnus was revered for his mechanical aptitude and feared for his ferocity in battle. He was known to trade lives for victory, which suited his rulers, who valued warjacks more than people. People were cheaper. It's easier to replace a man than a warjack's limb. His successors led him to fortune and favour. The king whom he served was King Finter Walthorn IV, and he served him well, never questioning his orders, never doubting his role. Magnus was not of noble breed, and whilst others scoffed at his supposedly obvious lust for power, Magnus stood firm in the belief that all that he did was for king and for pride of Signar. As a man of conviction, he understood his place was never to be on the throne, but why not beside it, as the hand of the king? However, there were those who opposed Finter's disregard for life. In a flash of a coup, King Finter was usurped by his own brother Leto. Leto took up the crown as king, but rather than execute Finter, he exiled him far in the west. Leto did not seek to destroy Signar, and once he had power, he pardoned the military leaders who had stood strong with Finter's rule. He even offered them positions in his new regime. But Magnus was a man of conviction. He spat at the offer and ensured Signar would not see the peace Leto desired. He led the royal knights he could muster into brutal guerrilla warfare. Now Magnus had a true goal: return Finter's rule. He had seen firsthand now Leto's greatest weakness. By letting Finter go and pardoning his enemies, he exposed a soft, weak underbelly not suited to rule. The path to victory would be long, but if any man could tread it, it was Magnus. So that is how he was gifted the title of traitor, but of warlord. Listen close. As Seth, Magnus tapped every contact he knew in the underbelly of Signar. He obtained arms and technology which he smuggled throughout the Iron Kingdoms. His genius was clear. Rather than muster a pitiful force and attack Leto directly, he supplied the enemies of Signar, feeding them secrets, arming them with advanced technologies, and whenever the time was right, striking with his own men, leading with a heart of vengeance. Magnus the Warlord cared not if Finter ruled over ash and dust, as long as he ruled. He financed his long war by trading his knowledge and abilities for coin. Many benefactors were happy with the deal. A man of conviction, yes, but perhaps one who underestimates his foes. Leto did not crumble. He had his own army, forces led by Magnus's former peers who knew how he thought, including Coleman Stryker, a student of war under Magnus. For years, Magnus threw every trick, every ounce of effort he could expand, but he could not find victory over Leto. As the years rolled by, Finter had since gained power in the West. Finter was no slouch, and in many ways he was a great ruler, just not for the people. He led war against the Scorn, slaughtering them by the hundreds. The Scorn were not unified and could not withstand such a well-organized foe. He challenged Makeda, a powerful leader. Both duelists were shocked and surprised by their foe, but Finter stood victorious. Ironically, much like his brother years ago had spared him, he spared Makeda, installed her a powerful position, and she turned out to be a very powerful ally. In a way, it could seem like Magnus was no longer essential to Finter's plans. He unified many of the Scorn, armed them, and thus had a dangerous force at hand. But still, Magnus had made Finter's enemies soft, weakened them. His return was all but inevitable. Finter was ungrateful for all that Magnus had done, and he inadvertently sealed his own doom. Finter sent a Scorn interrogator who felt no pity to torture Magnus and make him oust himself as a traitor. After all, how could Magnus have not secured the throne for Finta over these long years? He must be a double-crosser. Finta was so paranoid of betrayal after losing the throne, he could not trust even his most loyal follower. As we already know, Seth Magnus was a man of conviction, a man true to his liege. The torturer could not produce an admission, but this event changed how Magnus viewed the king, and new plans began to form from his head. You see, years ago, Finta had had a son, back when he was still on the throne. Unbeknownst to him, the woman whom he bedded was pregnant, and when she asked for his hand in marriage, he suspected her of spy or after the throne, and ordered the Inquisition to hunt her down. Even when her family said that she had died and mourned her at a funeral, he never ordered the Inquisition to stop looking. After all this time deep in the underbelly of the criminal world, Magnus knew how to find someone. It turned out to be a surprisingly easy task. So he took Julius, Leto's long-lost son, Prince of Signar, under his wing. In time, he had taught him everything he knew on how to lead and how to be a fine king. Magnus left his new ambitions unknown, and from a certain perspective, became a true traitor for the very first time. As Finta conquested east towards Signar, many feared he would violently reclaim the throne. Battle after battle, defeat after victory, back and forth. Finta was close. But the former king, driven nearly mad with paranoia and fear of betrayals, was finally expelled from the Scorn for using them for his own selfish gains. Finta saw this as the time to come home and take what was rightfully his. Signar had many great warcasters like Coleman Striker and many loyal men to hold the line against him, but soldiers sympathetic to his cause allowed him to seize the castle at Stonebridge. This would be the final resting place of this whole sorry conflict. He had even gotten many nobles to his side. It was true after all that his rule was usurped illegitimately by Leto. He captured the castle. Victory was within his grasp. He was able to lay waste to all that faced him, and Leto was in the palm of his hand. That is until Magnus, the traitor, the warlord, arrived with his mercenary force, Prince Julius with him. He struck down Finta, fulfilling his destiny as a betrayer. The nobles that sided with Finta did not want to admit defeat yet, and claimed Finta's son was legitimately the heir to the throne, and that Leto was a thief. To many surprise, though, Leto embraced his nephew and proclaimed him king. With the war for the throne finally over, Magnus returned home to Signar. He took up his old post as a commander. He ate, drank, and fought alongside those whom he once called foes. It was not for him, though. He'd been too long in exile. A few years later, he decided to surrender his role and left Signar once again. He took up his arms as a mercenary. It's what he had become used to. He was a mercenary in exile longer than he was ever a commander in the army. With a powerful warjack named Invictus that he had built from scratch, he's out there now, unstoppable. That was the tale of Magnus the Unstoppable, a man of many titles. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that video. I put tons of effort into the research in this one, but if I did get anything wrong, don't hesitate to drop it in the comments. Warmachine lore is a little bit scattered these days, and that's part of the reason I'm making these videos, to enlighten everyone in these awesome stories and awesome characters like Magnus. I also tried to do some pretty nifty edits. I think I'm getting better and better every video. Speaking of getting better, I think I've been improving a lot at paint overs or photo bashes, whatever you want to call them, for miniatures. If you want to support me financially, you can consider subscribing to my Patreon for £5 a month. And when you do that, I'll actually make one of these paint overs for you for any model that you want. and they make really cool wallpapers. I'm using one as a wallpaper right now, and I think they make really cool gifts as well. The best way to support me is to like and comment on the video to show the algorithm that you enjoyed it and want more content like this. And don't hesitate to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.